At the end of World War II, much of the West stood in ruins. Europe's greatest powers were shattered, millions were dead, and political leaders were searching for a framework that would prevent another civilizational collapse. What emerged was what author Reno later described as the post-war consensus, an elite agreement to reorganize Western society around a single overriding moral imperative: never again allow a figure like Adolf Hitler to rise. Anti-Fascism became the West's civil religion. This was understandable in the immediate aftermath of the war. Nazi Germany's atrocities demanded more than mere condemnation. But over time, anti-fascism ceased to function as a historical judgment and instead hardened into a permanent moral framework. In the process, it began to distort politics, hollow out our institutions, and undermine the concept of the nation itself. Anti-fascism served a second, less acknowledged function. The United States and its allies had partnered with the Soviet Union to defeat Hitler. The alliance was strategically necessary but morally grotesque. Communist regimes starved millions, persecuted Christians, liquidated entire classes, and carried out ethnic cleansing on a scale easily outstripping the Nazis. To sustain the moral legitimacy of the post-war order, Nazism had to remain the singular, unrivaled evil of modern history. Any serious moral accounting risked an intolerable conclusion. The West had joined forces with a regime at least as monstrous as the one it defeated. Because communism retained elite defenders in academia, media, and politics, fascism became the only ideology that could be universally condemned. Conservatives opposed both, but liberals embraced or excused communism. Anti-fascism thus became the sole moral language the entire ruling class could speak. The imbalance persists. Public figures openly describe themselves as socialists or communists without consequence. In fact, in some elite circles, that will actually elevate your standing and credibility. Communist symbols appear on clothing and merchandise, sometimes celebrated as ironic rebellion. Fascism alone remains socially radioactive. This asymmetry transformed the definition of fascism into a weapon. Anything directly associated with Nazism became forbidden, and soon anything vaguely adjacent followed. Online platforms remove or demonetize historical content for displaying Nazi imagery, even in documentary contexts. History itself must be censored to comply with the taboo. Meanwhile, symbols of communist regimes that murdered tens of millions of people provoke little more than mild disapproval. A guy wearing a Che Guevara shirt or a hammer and sickle, they might earn a sneer or something, but if you wear a swastika, that's going to end your career, maybe even your life. Absolute stigma confers absolute power. Control the definition of fascism, and you control the moral boundary of all acceptable thought. The left quickly grasped this dynamic and began expanding the category. Traditional social institutions were recast as latent fascism. Academic works such as Theodor Adorno's The Authoritarian Personality asserted that family structure, masculinity, Christianity, national identity, capitalism, and law and order were markers of authoritarian pathologies. Over time, the list expanded from Nazi symbols to Confederate flags, then Christian imagery, art styles, gestures, numbers, and ordinary behaviors. Organizations like the ADL and the Southern Poverty Law Center actually labeled things like physical fitness and drinking milk, or even the OK hand sign, as potential indicators of extremism. Conservatives love to mock the more absurd examples, but many accepted the earlier ones. It may seem weird to say this now, but for a long time, closing the border was a controversial opinion among conservative elites. Preferring one immigrant group over another was considered racist even by conservatives. Explicit national identity was a huge red flag. Christianity as a political foundation was considered authoritarian. Anti-fascism succeeded not because it was coherent, but because it was unchallengeable. The result is a civilization that has locked away the tools required for its own survival. A functional society requires cohesion, shared language, culture, norms, and tradition. Everyone isn't going to conform on every one of these requirements, but they have to conform on enough of them to actually assimilate. They have to assimilate to something. It has to mean something to them. When every mechanism of cohesion is labeled fascist, cohesion becomes impossible. Crime, educational collapse, family breakdown, failing birth rates, and social fragmentation, None of these are impossible to fix. The corrective measures are well understood, but they've been rendered politically illegitimate because they're all somehow hallmarks of fascism. Conservatives often avoid them out of fear, or worse, oppose them in the name of anti-fascism itself. This doesn't prevent authoritarianism, it guarantees it. If something doesn't change radically on our current trajectory, there's really only two outcomes. One is an increasingly authoritarian managerial state that governs a disintegrating society through surveillance, regulation, and bureaucratic coercion. The other is a decisive leader who smashes the glass labeled fascism and uses the forbidden tools outright. The longer conservatives wait to make reasonable corrections, the more radical, and likely more authoritarian, the eventual correction will become. Look, Nazism was evil, and opposing it was obviously right. But elevating anti-fascism into the West's single, unquestionable religious principle has been catastrophic. It's stripped societies of the ability to govern themselves prudently and ensured that when the correction finally comes, it will be far harsher than anything even the most ardent anti-fascists claim to fear. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and click like, and if you haven't subscribed yet, now is a great time to do so. If you'd like to get these broadcasts as podcasts, make sure to subscribe to the Auron MacIntyre Show on your favorite podcast platform. And when you do, if you leave a rating or review, it really helps with the algorithm magic. If you'd like to follow me on Twitter or Gab or Substack or Instagram, if you'd like to get these videos on Rumble or Odyssey, the links to do that are down below in the description. And guys, it's been a fantastic year. I want to thank everybody for watching. Just got a show or two left before we go on Christmas break. If you'd like to do me a favor, if you want to get me a Christmas gift this year, then really please go ahead and subscribe. Encourage others to subscribe. Share the show out. It keeps growing. We've been hitting all kinds of great new numbers. It's been fantastic to watch. And if you can just continue to support, that's the greatest gift you can give me. I really appreciate everything you guys have done, and I hope you have a very Merry Christmas and a very Happy New Year. If you're looking for a last-minute Christmas gift, don't forget that my book, The Total State, it's going to go into its second printing, and that's going to be a paperback. So if you want to get one of the hardbacks that's still left, you can snag them now. I think they're even on a discount. So if you want to get a present, you want to make sure that you're going to have a hardback copy, or you want to make sure a loved one has one, I'd really appreciate it. You can pick up The Total State on Amazon or at many different bookstores like Barnes & Noble. And don't forget, you can support the show and just treat yourself by subscribing to The Blaze, where you can find my show, my columns, and all the other great hosts, all their behind-the-scenes stuff. You can just over to Blaze TV or Blaze Media. Thank you once again, everybody, for watching. And as always, I'll talk to you next time.